What is up, everybody? Chris Hendrickson here, coming at you with another episode of Hendrickson Media. And I saw this article a few weeks ago in the Effective Altruism Facebook group. If you're not in that group already, it is a wonderful resource for effective altruism information, connecting with effective altruists around the world and seeing all the cool stuff that people are doing to make the most of money to give as much as possible and help as many people as possible, or animals as possible. And the headline in this article says, "Does taking pleasure in giving to others make us selfish?" Recent research helps explain the warm glow of giving. And now, I haven't been a charitable person my entire life. Like, I grew up Catholic, and I know in Catholicism, giving like 10% of your income to charity is like a common thing, but that was never really a common activity in my household growing up. I think like the extent of my giving was maybe around Christmas time when I'd see people for the Salvation Army ringing the bell, pop a few dollars in there. But I think that was like the extent of my giving. But then as I got older and as I realized like what my core values were, I realized how awesome giving to charity made me feel. And not only does it help others, but it viscerally gives me a positive feeling. And that is what researchers are diving into on here, is that positive feeling people get when donating to charity or helping others. So, as it says here, if a single word could capture the feeling of the holiday seasons, if a single word could capture the feel of the winter holidays, it might be glow. The word itself sounds snug and warm. It suggests candlelight, roaring fireplaces, and light twinkling through bows and brightening the darkest days of the year. It conjures the feeling that accommodates gift giving too. Giving gifts reliably creates a cozy, pleasurable feeling that economists dub it the warm glow of generosity. But much like the creeping shadows cast by the cheeriest fire, the warm glow has a dark side. Economist James Andreoni, who coined the term, claimed that the glow of giving makes acts of generosity ultimately selfish. All right? If giving feels good, how generous can it really be? Maybe gifts are just another way of using another person to make ourselves feel good. All right, that's a really interesting topic. There are many people out there who, when they get caught up in a scandal or they do something and it gets exposed in the media as being, morally apprehensible, they, follow it up by making a generous donation to some charity to try to, save their image or whatever. And they probably feel really good about doing it. But there's no denying that the rush of positive feeling that accommodates the act of giving. When researchers give participants a little money, those who are randomly selected to spend it on someone else report feeling happier than those instructed to spend it on themselves. All right, and this one was really fascinating right here. I hadn't heard about this bit of research. Even 1 and 2-year-old toddlers feel happier after giving cookies to a puppet than receiving treats themselves. All right, an inanimate object, a puppet, 1 to 2-year-olds feel happier about giving to than receiving the treats themselves. And I find that really, really fascinating how it's kind of like ingrained in us evolutionarily. If you take away the warm glow by compensating people for a gift, which turns giving into a transaction, generosity declines. All right, so I'm going to read that back. If you take away the warm glow by compensating people for a gift, which turns into a transaction, generosity declines. All right. Neuroscience research has linked the warm glow of giving to activity in a region of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, where the neurotransmitter dopamine is released. Dopamine is the neurochemical that basically makes us feel all good. People who are drug addicts or gambling addicts, they get addicted to that dopamine feeling, and that is why some chemicals or some activities are naturally addictive, because of that release of that dopamine. Going into this, let me see where I was at. Where the neurotransmitter dopamine is released results in feeling of heightened well-being and the desire to repeat whatever caused it. As I just mentioned, this makes dopamine a key player in addictions. Cocaine, for example, also causes dopamine to spike. It would be an overstatement to equate gift giving with an addiction, but the warm glow of giving does tend to make people want to give more, leading to ascending spirals of generosity and reward. Continuing down here, this positive feedback loop can drive generosity to awe-inspiring heights. The unforeseen rush of emotions that Bill Gates experienced during a trip to Africa in the 1990s to give children computers ultimately led him to create the mighty Gates Foundation, which does so much work around the world to make the world a better place, helps out just so many people. It's really, really incredible. And a businessman named Rob Mather was so moved by the experience of raising money to help one injured child that he went on to found the Against Malaria Foundation, which has raised over $140 million and is described as one of the world's most effective charity. And as you might remember, I covered the Against Malaria Foundation in my top charities video a few weeks ago. So if you haven't already, check that one out. There are so many great organizations like Evidence Action's Deworm the World initiative and many, many more. So definitely go watch that video to hear about all the cool stuff they're doing. So in our work, we've interviewed dozens of some of the most extraordinary altruists in the world, people who have given one of their own kidneys to a stranger, and nearly all started out as blood donors and volunteers. To a person, they say that their donation brought them immense pleasure and that they would do it again if they could. As one altruist told us, there's a euphoria that accompanies the act of living donation, which is difficult to explain without sounding a little crazy. But from a utilitarian perspective, it's not that crazy at all. It's undeniably a good thing that giving feels good. It's undeniably a good thing that giving feels good, as it motivates us to keep giving. But perhaps it really does make giving selfish. Andreoni and others argue that the emotional rewards of giving robbed the act of real virtue. Maybe those who give are actually the most selfish, just angling for a dopamine rush. In my experience of working with truly altruistic people, I do not find that to be the case. Yes, there are many benefits that people get in the public eye for donating, but very rarely are people, fiending to give to another charity, because if they do that behavior, then they're just going to end up broke. And they'll go into that same spiral that maybe a gambling addict or a cocaine addict might do. And the article basically says, maybe not. A recent review found that narcissists who are genuinely selfish are less generous than other people, and that when they do give gifts, it's only to impress or influence people, not because they genuinely care about them. This makes sense. If giving were just about feeling good, a truly selfish person would choose an easier and less costly way to get the same result. Dopamine is released by eating chocolate and having sex. So someone could easily get a dopamine rush from eating chocolate or having sex rather than donating to charity and doing that in public. So continuing down, another possibility is that taking pleasure in helping others is what it means to be generous. Think of it this way. Would you consider someone who gives gifts begrudgingly to be more selfish than someone who takes joy in it? Of course not. As Buddhist monk and neuroscientist Matthew Ricard argues, the fact that we feel satisfaction upon completing an altruistic action presupposes that we are naturally inclined to favor the other's happiness. If we were completely indifferent to others' fate, why would we feel pleasure in taking care of them? All right. And that's what I feel when I am giving to charity. Yes, it causes me an immense pleasure every time I get to donate a little bit of my disposable income to organizations like Mercy for Animals, Animal Equality, the Against Malaria Foundation, Encompass, the Humane League. I feel incredibly happy about that. And I've always thought that that is me being selfish. Like, yes, I do want to help the work that they're doing, but ultimately I give because it makes me feel good. And since I know that it makes me feel good when I give, I choose to give to the most effective organizations when I'm generally giving out donations. When I have a friend or a loved one who needs a donation, I feel equally good giving to them, even though it might not be like globally the most effective use of my donation. I still feel very good donating to a friend's project or to a family member's campaign, whatever they're doing. But ultimately, when I donate, I'm doing it because I feel good and I support the work of the organization that I'm giving the money to. And I think that's really the difference, because if people were really just donating because they pathologically feel like donating, then it wouldn't matter really where they choose to donate because the dopamine rush is going to be the same. And I think that, if one was really trying to game the system, like the narcissist said, to impress people or to influence others, then they would ultimately give where they could get the most benefit from those around them. And, maybe that's true. Maybe there are a select few groups of people who do that. But at the end of the day, like, what's the difference? Why does that matter if they are donating because they want to impress people? They're donating because they're donating and the work is going to get done as a result of that donation. So I think this is like absolutely fascinating that Psychology Today is covering this, and I know many groups are also researching, why people give, why does it make us feel good to give. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link this article in the description, but I just want to go through this last bit about the research in the author's laboratory. So research in my laboratory has identified some of the brain processes that naturally presuppose us to taking pleasure in helping. For example, an altruist who gave a kidney to strangers, parts of the brain that support parental nurturing, like the amygdala and I don't know what that word is, periaqueductal gray, I don't know. Let me know in the comments how to pronounce that, are unusually large and densely interconnected and responsive to others' needs. Animal studies find that the release of the nurturing hormone oxytocin, the quote, like love chemical, in these brain regions when caring for others is responsible for subsequent dopamine surges. This suggests that it is our fundamentally caring nature that moves us to help others, and that feeling good may merely be a lucky and foreseeable outcome of giving rather than its purpose. So because there is the hormone oxytocin and it's released because of our caring and nurturing nature as humans, the dopamine feeling of positivity is a subsequent reaction as a result of that. So this is a really fascinating bit of research. We talk about charitable giving a lot on this channel, and it's really interesting to see the biological and psychological and sociological predications that occur to then go and do smart charity. So really, really excited about this article and glad that it's being shared. In other words, feel free to bask in the warm glow of gift giving this holiday. That feeling you are enjoying is hallmark of generosity, not its absence. So thank you so much to Abigail Marsh, who's an associate professor of psychology and neuroscience at Georgetown, for putting together this article. This was really fantastic. I really enjoyed reading it, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, if you like more content like this, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. If you have your own opinions on this, post them in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. I'd love to hear from you, and to keep up with that conversation, be sure to follow me on Hendrickson Media on YouTube. It's at Hendrickson News on Twitter. We're going to keep the conversation going there too. Check out the tweet featuring this article that's going to accompany the video. And lastly, don't forget to go over to Facebook and follow there. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are, and stay tuned for more awesome videos.